Next, we are going to move to House Bill 17, and there is a PCS. Representative Byrd, do you want to, let me just make a brief announcement on the PCS, that there is a portion of the bill that the PCS is removing, and this is not the sponsor who's wanting to remove it. This is coming from higher up levels, so please, if you were here in favor of that portion of the bill on the restaurant carry, please do not hold the bill sponsor responsible. Those instructions are coming from higher up the chain of command. With that, Representative Blackwell moves to bring the PCS before the committee for discussion purposes. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion carries. The PCS is before us. Representative Byrd, you are recognized to explain the PCS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as Representative Buss said, if I had my way, I certainly would stick with the original bill. And there's several other pieces of legislation that I'd like to see included in that to continue to expand concealed carry across the state. But that piece has been passed by the House in the past 2 years, and the Senate has not taken that up, and it is a matter of what is the will of the 170 members. And I certainly want to make sure that we can at least take care of this crucial portion of the bill in the very near future, and that is the privacy piece for those folks who have a concealed carry permit license and who have applied for permits through their local sheriff's department. And I know we can get to it in a minute. And I know as we take public comments, I believe that the Sheriff's Association can speak on where they stand on this legislation. But Mr. Chairman and members, I can tell you that well over 30 other states have this privacy for concealed carry permit holders, and pieces of that in their laws to protect to protect gun owners. And you know, I mentioned a story a while ago when I first got elected. And some of you, if you're concealed carry permit holders, you may have had this happen as well. But right after I was elected, I got an email from someone who basically sent me all of my personal information that they were able to obtain through a public information request, because I am a concealed carry permit holder. And it's a little concerning that that information is available for anyone to obtain at any time. And I certainly see that there is no good public interest and serves no public interest, and really only exposes law-abiding citizens by allowing this information to be public. It will still be accessible to law enforcement, which I think is very important, but it is you know, confidentiality which will protect both those who are permit holders and those who aren't, keep you from potentially being targeted by criminals. And it's just a common sense measure that will take care of kind of balancing both sides and make sure, as I said, that the law enforcement community is able to still access the record, but that it is private and that you do not have to worry about being targeted because you have a concealed carry permit or you've applied for any type of license. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and you know, I believe we do have some folks here from the public that would like to comment on the bill as well.
First, is there anything staff would like to add to that explanation? It's a pretty straightforward bill at this point. Are there questions from the committee? Representative Adams. Yes. The PCS, there was a portion of the bill that allowed concealed carry in restaurants. That portion of the bill has now been taken out of the bill. That's the big difference in the PCS. So the PCS now is just dealing with the confidentiality portion of the bill. Further questions from the committee? If not, let's move to public comment. I do have 3 who have signed up, but we certainly will entertain more if there are more who desire to address the committee. The first name I have is Dr. Art Cam.
Mine was going to be on the restaurant piece, Mr. Chairman, and if that has been removed from the bill, no need to comment.
All right, thank you. Gail Neely.
Mine also is on the restaurant carry. I have no
Ben Miles from Guilford County.
My position, comment was also on restaurant carry. Mainly, we'd like to keep it there. Other than that, there's nothing else to say.
I do assume that all three of you support at least the confidentiality portion.
We do.
Are there further members? Yes, Dr.
No, I do
Pam.
not support the confidential issue, basically on the basis of research purposes, which can be maintained with confidentiality, but I'm not prepared to speak on that either.
Paul Malone.
Yeah, hi, my name is Paul Balone. I direct Grassroots North Carolina. I'm here to urge you to keep the restaurant carry provision in this because concealed handgun permit holders have spent 18 years proving themselves sane, sober, and law-abiding. Nothing in this bill is untested. In fact, 43 states allow some measure of concealed carry in restaurants, and it was enacted recently in Georgia, Arizona, Tennessee, Virginia, and Ohio. This is a top priority for the gun owners of North Carolina, and frankly, they're not going to be happy that it's being removed for entirely political purposes.
And I think we understand that, and the sponsor, and I will help in any way I can, will try to find a vehicle to move that particular subject matter, that portion of the bill forward. And the House did pass that last time, and the holdup was the Senate, so we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. So talk to senators and House leaderships, what I would advise anyone. Is there anyone else from the public? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Mann. I represent the North Carolina Rifle and Pistol Association. We're made up of several thousand competitive and match shooting enthusiasts. We are also disappointed the restaurant piece has been taken out. However, we do strongly support the confidentiality piece. We don't see there's any legitimate reason for revealing that type of information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Adrian Cagle. I represent the North Carolina Sheriff Association. I want to thank Representative Burr for recognizing this sensitive issue, and we fully support this bill. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Roulette. I represent the National Rifle Association, and we strongly support the confidentiality issue with the permit holders. Obviously, we also support the restaurant carry provision, but we certainly understand that there are other things going on here, but we strongly support the legislation that is being considered right now.
Thank you. Further comments? If not, did I see Representative McNeil? Were you wishing to debate or discuss or ask a question?
Well, I just want to make a comment. Just in the past 4 or 5 days, I've got over 500 emails, and they were all in favor of the restaurant carry portion of this bill, and I'm just disappointed it was taken out also.
And I had discussions with the bill sponsor last night about even going forward with this, but we do think the confidentiality provision in this bill is important enough that we need to go ahead and get that passed, because we saw in New York what happened with one of the local papers up there publicizing this information. Is there further discussion or debate by the committee? Representative Jackson.
I do have a few questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
And I'll start with your last comment. If you could explain to us what happened in New York. You said that was the basis for the bill.
Oh, I don't know. I was speaking for myself. I don't know if that's the basis of the bill, but there was a paper up there that published the names of the concealed carry holders. It was fairly well publicized. I think back in December and January, I put the maps online, which allowed criminals to know exactly where you could get a gun. Representative Jackson, follow up.
And are you saying because of that map, the criminals targeted those houses, or did they purposely stayed away from those houses?
Well, there was evidence of both. They would know where to go. It was alleged by some that assisted the criminals in their devious endeavors. Representative Representative Adams was next.
Thank you, Chair. Well, let me just clarify. So the information would be available, but not to the general public. Who would it be available to?
Let staff address that, but it should be available to law enforcement. It would be those areas. If that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Susan Seitz.
The bill would make the records of concealed carry permits, pistol permits, which are individual purchase permits and the records of gun sales, all not public record, but they would still be available to state and local law enforcement agencies. And in the case of the concealed carry permit, there would be a statewide electronic database that law enforcement could access easily to determine if someone had a concealed carry permit.
Representative Ross, did you have a question or comment?
I just wanted to know if there was anybody here from the media or the press association that has a comment on the bill, because every time we take things out of the public domain, we hear from them at some point, and so I think they were here for another bill, but I'd like to know if they have a position on this.
Is that the gentleman was here from the press association for Mr. Busian. Did he leave the committee? Because you're right, someone did address this on the workers' comp issue, but I don't see him now.
Okay.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could follow up on some of my questions. One was for staff. You said something about a statewide database. Is that a database that currently exists, or is this something new that is going to have to be created?
That's in the current law. It's just the way the bill's written. It's being removed in one sentence and inserted back in another. That's in the current.
Follow up, Representative Jackson.
Exactly who will be able to access these databases to make sure that the sheriffs have followed a proper procedure, having granted a permit to someone with a mental health history or something like that? Who will be able to access these records and verify that the proper procedures have been followed?
The state and local law enforcement officers will be able to access the database to see that the permits, et cetera, exist. And I guess, suppose if necessary, can go and look at the permit, the actual hard copies in the sheriff's file, because those would also be available. But I don't know that that means that they will actually go back through the application and determine whether it should have been issued or not.
Follow up.
Would domestic violence judges and things of that nature have access to it?
Not under the way that it is currently written.
Representative Adams.
Thank you. So if there was a question about someone's mental instability, they would have to go through the sheriff's department in order to get what would happen there?
The information that's being held is the identifying information on the list of permit holders and the information that they collect when they apply for the permit. I'm not sure I follow your question. If someone has a mental health issue, if they're before a court, the court can ask them if they have a concealed carry permit. If they're under oath, they're supposed to say yes or no, answer honestly. I'm not sure what exactly would want to happen. I'm not sure exactly what your question is.
Representative Adams.
I mean, if there was an issue or there was some question about a person's mental instability and stability, and they perhaps have a weapon, how would would medical authorities be able to go to the sheriff's department and have that information obtained?
No, there's not. No, medical authorities would not be able to go to the sheriff and say, does this person have a concealed carry permit?
Could I ask a question that might get to this? Could these be subject to subpoena? I mean, the court could gain access to the proper channels, could they not?
Correct. Just because they're public record doesn't mean that you can never get them. It just means you can't walk in to the sheriff and the sheriff have to turn them over to you unless you're a state law enforcement agency.
Representative Brandon.
Yeah, I wanted to know, just from the background information, what was the reason why we had it in the public domain? And is there any other North Carolina permits that still have the same problem that Representative Burr had, that if you obtain a permit, then, the whole entire world can receive your information? Is this only a concealed carry permit that happens, or are there other permits that you can get in the state of North Carolina where that can happen?
They were public record based because the General Assembly had not said they were not public record. There was never anything that said these are public record. It just had been said that they weren't, so the presumption was, under the public records law, that they were public record. This covers the three, this covers concealed carry permits, pistol purchase permits, and the sales of weapons that federally licensed firearms dealers keep, as far as whether or not those are public records.
Representative Burr, would you like to respond to this?
I think that this as well, you know, we've seen other states begin to pass this legislation because in a digital age and with the access, open access to the internet, you're seeing folks just upload individuals' private information where it probably wasn't abused as much in, you know, previous days where you'd go in and access one individual's records, where now you're just taking everybody's, putting it all online for the whole world to see, which was not the intent, I believe, of why that was left as open records. So, you know, as I said, there's over 30 states. I think it's getting closer to 40 states, if not more, that have already passed this law. Several just in the past few weeks that have done it as well.
Representative R.
One of the questions for the bill sponsor, I want to make sure that I'm right on this. What we're talking about here is not the granting of the permit, but once the permit is granted, opening that up to public view. So the mental health issues are not addressed in this. Those have already been vetted, and the permit is granted. So the question before us is whether or not that should be a public document. I think what we're talking about is, should the gun permits be open, but not the mental health records of potentially dangerous people? We're not including those in here. What we're saying is law-abiding gun permit owners need to have their information secure, available to law enforcement, those who need to know, but protect their privacy just like possibly we do for mental health records of other people.
Representative McNeils.
As Representative Arp has just kind of pointed out, and I want to expound on that just a little bit, during the concealed weapons permit process, a person that goes to get their permit is sent to mental health, and they have to go to mental health and get a statement from them. Okay. Now, certainly, and your question is, can mental health then come back and access it? Well, mental health should already know that this person has applied for a concealed weapon permit, because this person has to go to them and get some paperwork from them to take back to the sheriff's to get the permit. So whether mental health keeps a record of that or not, certainly they could, but because they're seeing everybody and have to give them this paperwork before they go back to get the permit. So
I do see that Mr. John Busian has arrived at the committee. Mr. Busian, we did have a public comment, and we certainly want to get the press associations to weigh in on this matter, this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry I was here, stepped out, and you called me. And in any case, I appreciate the chance to address the committee on this. This is a tough subject for the Press Association, which, as most of you know, has stood for the proposition that's embedded in our Constitution in the state, that there's a presumption that all records that are collected by the government are open for public inspection and copying. So whenever one of these bills comes up, whether it's gun permits or licensing of professionals by the state, and there's a bill that would make what has always been public secret, we're here to ask whether there's a real good reason to reduce the level of public access, because that has always been a hallmark of government in this state and local government. So, as we discussed in the Senate committee when this first came up, we haven't really seen a rash of burglaries or any other hard evidence for the need to do this. There's another bill that's been filed in the Senate that would require a supermajority on any bill to reduce the level of public access to records and meetings. So we would just ask that you carefully consider difficult a subject as this is, for all those who claim that these things are private by nature, we start with the presumption that all of the records collected by the government are public. And unless there's a really good reason, we don't exempt them from public inspection. Thank you.
Mr. Malone, do I see you itching to add something here?
Well, with respect to whether or not there's a compelling need to remove them from public record, we should note that not only the Journal News exposed concealed handgun permit holders, but we've seen the abuse of this database twice in this state. First by the New York Times, and second by WRAL-TV when they published an address searchable database of concealed handgun permit holders. And although they claimed it was only partial information, the fact is people were sending me satellite photos of their homes which they were able to identify using that database. So we feel there is a compelling need.
Yes, sir.
My name's Paul O'Donoghue. I'm also with GRNC as a volunteer. I want to emphasize that although I'm going to state that I work for the Department of Public Instruction, I'm not here representing them. But as a response to the Press Association about public information, there's supposed to be public information that's being made private, I emphasize that DPI as an agency, we deal with freedom of information requests all the time, but never is the student's information public. It's not considered public. So I don't think anyone with GRNC would oppose an aggregate information being made available, like the number of permits per county. But having our addresses and names available to anyone and everyone to be able to publish online as a map like they did in New York, making people vulnerable to robberies or whatever else, no, that's not something we should support, as DPI will not release information on students.
Mr. O'Donoghue, after the committee, could you come forward and tell Ms. Childress how to spell your name so we get it right on the record?
Yes, I will.
Representative Ross.
Just one point and then a question for staff. The reason why DPI can't release the records is because there's a federal Privacy Act for student records, so there isn't a federal Privacy Act for these records, and that's why, so it's not an art person. But my question for staff is, this bill deals with confidentiality for people who have concealed handgun permits. What are the rules for people who just have regular permits, not concealed permits? Are they going to get special exceptions, or is there another law that applies for them?
This applies not only to concealed carry permits, but also pistol purchase permits, which are required to purchase a handgun if you don't have a concealed carry permit, okay, and to the records of weapons sales that the federally licensed firearms dealers have to keep. So this applies to any record of the purchase of the firearm, or the pistol purchase permit, or the concealed carry permit, as far as the actual record that someone has bought or is gotten a permit to purchase or carry, and the information associated with that transaction.
Representative Ross, follow up.
So the weapon sales, which may not have somebody's address on it, but just how many weapons somebody bought, will also be kept from the public records?
If you look at Section 3 of the bill, you'll see the statute that dealers have to keep records of sales, including the name, place of residence, date of sale, firm, corporation. Those records are being removed from the public record.
And
Representative Ross, follow up.
yes, so every single solitary thing about those sales, all those things are kept out of the public record, not just the person's address, which would go to the issue of stealing somebody's guns or breaking into their house, but the fact that they sold it to a particular person, that would be kept out, correct?
Correct.
Representative Steinberg.
I would like to move that we vote on House Bill 17 and recommend that we move the bill forward. Favorable.
Let's first, did I hear someone else? Representative Adams.
I have a question. You mentioned the publication in New York. What was the outcome, other than the fact that it was published in New York?
Representative Burr.
Murders or robberies?
Well, let's fact that someone's personal information is put online for the entire world to see, that criminals can now get onto a database and see where someone lives at, and they know that that individual has a gun. So, you know, is that the kind of information we want online? I would say no. That is private information. The fact that I'm a concealed carry permit holder is my business, and when I interact with law enforcement, it's their business. But beyond that, that is a right that I believe is not one that should lead me to be targeted because I choose to have a permit or that anyone else chooses to have a permit.
Follow up, Representative Adams.
I understand what you're saying, David. My specific question is, as a result of it being published, were there instances of
Well, I wasn't the one that mentioned the New York situation. You know, I mean, we can wait and find out what happens, but this is the point of the bill, is to try to get ahead of the problem and make sure that we're addressing this before this information gets online and something bad happens to either someone targeted because they have a permit holder, or a criminal gets a hold of it and starts breaking in houses where they know folks don't appear to have guns in their homes because they're easy targets. I mean, it's just simply trying to take a tool out of a criminal's hands so that it's one less thing they can use to commit a crime one way or another.
Representative Steinberg.
Yes, again, motion on the floor favorable to the committee, substitute unfavorable to the bill. That's the second request I had to move this forward.
The chair wasn't ready to accept that with more questions by the committee, so are there further questions by the committee at this point? If not, you're recognized for your motion, Representative Steinberg.
I recommend that we move favorable to the committee, substitute unfavorable to the bill.
Representative Steinberg has moved to give the proposed committee substitute a favorable report, unfavorable as to the original bill. Is there discussion or debate on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The proposed committee substitute is given a favorable report. That concludes the committee's business, and we are adjourned.